Today, in Chapter 36 of Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, we will discuss Dvigraha Yoga, the conflict and union of energies. Welcome to this explainer, where we are jumping straight into the absolute core of classical astrological mechanics. In this specific chapter, the sage Parashara outlines exactly what happens when two massive cosmic forces occupy the exact same celestial real estate. So, let's explore how these ancient verses decode the complex layers of human personality and destiny.
Okay, let's dive right in. We need to begin by establishing our core definition. Dvi means two, and graha refers to a planetary body, or more accurately, a grasping energy. Dvigraha yoga happens when two distinct planetary bodies share the exact same zodiacal space in a chart. This proximity forces their unique, and sometimes completely opposing energies to either merge seamlessly to create something beautiful or clash violently, creating immense friction. It's never a neutral event. It's a highly active chemical reaction up in the sky.
Let's start with verse 1, focusing on the sun and the moon.
We begin by examining the ultimate cosmic encounter, the profound conjunction of the luminaries. Let's look closely at the original Sanskrit text, which really serves as the immutable foundation for this ancient principle. The verse addresses the Ravi Chandra Yoga and lays down a highly specific set of behavioral outcomes for an individual born under this celestial event. When we actually break down the verse word by word, the literal translation points to a person who is skilled in machinery and stonework, yet possesses a remarkably subservient nature. Now, at first glance, machinery and subservience might seem like a really odd combination, but it actually reveals a deep psychological profile of someone who is methodical, highly practical, and usually operating behind the scenes rather than actively seeking the spotlight. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual layers of interpretation we're working with. Astrologically speaking, this conjunction forms a new moon. It's the merging of the king, which is the sun, and the queen, the moon, within the planetary cabinet. But philosophically, it's profound. It represents the soul's intense, burning fire, completely overpowering the reflective emotional mind. Basically, the mind loses its independent light and becomes entirely absorbed by the soul's singular purpose.
So what does this actually look like today? Well, in our modern world, this alignment frequently manifests in individuals who excel under pressure in fields like mechanical engineering, specialized technical work, or public service. Driven by a singular, intense focus, they are your diplomats and your master technicians. Their mental intensity is absolutely their greatest asset, though they do have to carefully navigate their tendency to subjugate their own emotional needs to a higher authority or a demanding project.
Moving to the second half of verse 1, we look at the Sun and Mars. This is where the dynamic shifts from a complex, internalized union to a highly external, explosive event. The translation reveals a vastly different character, describing an individual defined by immense physical strength, raw energy, and a noticeably high propensity for martial conflict. The ancient terms explicitly point toward aggression, valor, and an unyielding, forceful nature. Think about the hierarchy of the planetary cabinet from the texts. The sun is the king, right? And Mars is the army chief. Combining their fiery, authoritative natures creates a brilliant but highly combative and volatile energy. Philosophically, this is the core ego directly amplifying raw physical strength and survival instincts. There's literally no water here to cool things down. It is pure, unadulterated fire. Practically, this translates into modern-day gladiators. We're talking about elite athletes, military commanders, first responders, and bold, pioneering corporate leaders. They possess an endless reservoir of energy. However, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is energy management. They have to actively and consciously manage their incredibly fierce temperaments, or they face a persistent risk of physical burnout and interpersonal aggression. All right, let's shift gears and look at verse 2, starting with the Sun and Jupiter. Transitioning seamlessly into verse 2, the text explores a highly auspicious and culturally revered alignment, the Ravi Guru Yoga. This verse outlines the harmonious merging of the solar ego, our sense of self and vitality, with Jupiter's expansive, benevolent cosmic wisdom and moral law. Evaluating the literal meaning of these specific words gives us an overwhelmingly positive outcome. The text describes a person who is deeply spiritually inclined, a natural teacher or guide, wealthy, and highly respected by the governing authority. It's essentially the classical signature of a pillar of society.
The astrological union here is that of the king and his most trusted, wise minister. This produces a true philosophical masterpiece. It represents a soul that naturally seeks higher knowledge, universal truth, and righteous action. In this state, the ego is no longer self-serving. It is completely illuminated by divine wisdom and directed toward the upliftment of others. In today's world, you'll see this powerful alignment in esteemed judges, high-level university professors, spiritual leaders, and philanthropic giants. These are the folks who just naturally command respect when they walk into a room. And it's not through force, like we saw with Mars, but through natural moral authority and a reputation for fair, expansive thinking.
Now for the final part of verse 2, the Sun and Venus.
Verse 2 concludes with what is arguably one of the most paradoxical alignments in the entire text. Translating the duality of these words reveals a real push and pull of energy. We see a person who successfully gains wealth through performance, the arts, or surprisingly weaponry, but simultaneously suffers from significant relationship strife and potential issues with their eyesight. It's a very specific combination of material success and intense personal friction. The crucial point we have to understand here is the mechanics of combustion. The blinding, scorching light of the sun literally combusts Venus when they get too close. Venus is the minister of luxury and connection. Symbolically, this means the individual's powerful ego and identity are quite literally burning out their capacity for balanced personal relationships. It's perhaps the oldest celestial definition of a bad romance.
In practical terms, this is the classic trope of the tortured artist or the highly successful but intensely lonely executive. While this individual might achieve immense wealth or artistic fame through sheer force of will, they will almost certainly have to navigate intense power struggles and friction within their intimate partnerships. The ego just demands center stage, leaving very little room for compromise. So, how do we actually calculate all of this? Having explored the philosophical interpretations, we must now examine the rigid mathematical methodology required to actually calculate these yogas. Astrology at this level is an exact science of angles and light. The calculation follows strict chronological steps. First, locating the planets in the same zodiacal sign. Second, plotting their exact longitudinal degrees. Third, measuring their mathematical proximity. And finally, determining if one planet completely overwhelms or combusts the other. Because just being in the same room isn't enough, we need to know exactly how close they are standing. This is where the math gets incredibly deep. We must mathematically evaluate the underlying dignity and strength of each planet using a concept called Saptavarga Jabala. The texts provide a formula utilizing Virupus, which are essentially units of positional strength. You calculate the distance from a planet's deep debilitation point, divide by 3, and assess its strength across 7 divisional charts, like the Mula Trikona, its own sign, a friend sign, and so on. This mathematical positional strength tells us definitively which energy ultimately controls the union.
The big takeaway here is that a Dvigraha yoga is never a static, one-size-fits-all prediction. Its final, real-world manifestation shifts radically depending on the host sign they occupy, their exaltation or debilitation states, their calculated Saptavarga Jabala, and exactly how close they are by mathematical degree. For instance, a Sun-Mars conjunction in fiery Aries operates entirely differently than that exact same conjunction in watery Cancer. We've seen how classical texts break down the precise mechanics of human nature through the lens of these planetary conjunctions. So, when you look at the cosmic energies mathematically plotted in your own life, you have to ask yourself, are they fighting for dominance, creating friction you need to resolve? Or are they working together in perfect unison, waiting to be harnessed? Thank you for joining this deep exploration of Chapter 36.